Would you say that arguments in relationships are a sign of lack of cohesiveness and considering others' opinions and thoughts as invaluable? Thank you, Reggie, for the comment. First of all, we need to know what kind of relationship we are talking about. Is it an objective-oriented relationship, or is it a subjective-led relationship? Is it a functional and harmony-oriented relationship? Or perhaps functionality and harmony are not so important in that relationship as pleasing the golden child and the narcissist of the group? Is the responsible held accountable in that relationship? Or the responsible can be held accountable only when rewarded when there is success, but when there's failure, the group finds a scapegoat to sacrifice, and the scapegoat would be held responsible and accountable. Those are important questions because, unlike what most empathic and reasonable people think, in many systems, it's much less important to be functional and harmonic than to massage the ego of the golden child and the narcissist. For example, in governmental bureaucratic organizations, the bureaucrat and the politician would be rarely held accountable for any damage that they cause. On the contrary, the taxpayer always pays the price of the mistakes and the damages of the bureaucrat and the officials. The bureaucrat can waste the time of the citizen on irrelevant and unnecessary bureaucracy, and the citizen will always pay the price. Some policemen and officials can kill citizens by accident or not by accident, and yet get away with it. But citizens will always pay the price. And in the news and in the public relations, the policemen and the officials, and they will always be heroes, always. And citizens who dare to resist, will always be held as terrorists or criminals. And the same thing that happens on the macro level in governmental bureaucratic organizations and in societies happens also in the micro, in private lives, in personal lives, and in such swamps. In subjective-led relationships, the relevance of the argument has less to do with the systematic patterns, but rather with the dynamics of that specific group that is bound to the moody whims of the narcissist and the golden child. If you're living in such environments and you don't want to leave, one must be on a high level of emotional intelligence in order to survive that. Because it's not about the quality or the accuracy or the relevance of the argument, but rather about pleasing the golden child and the narcissist and maintaining the status quo that privileges them. So here, it's not about being just, it's about being intelligent. Anyway, if one doesn't want to waste emotional wealth and mental wealth and financial wealth, maybe, on hopeless black holes, then one might need to choose to live in objective-oriented environments and to bond with empathic and reasonable and objective-oriented like-minded, because only in such environments the arguments are not only relevant but also necessary. And people live whole lives before grasping this point. So they keep trying to convince and to fit in, while the other side is not interested in the truth in the first place. Many try today to argue about the number of infections and number of deaths and so many data, empiric data, and they try to argue with facts and numbers. But this is naive, because the golden children on the other side are not interested in the truth. They know the truth, but they are not interested in what it has to offer, because this whole hoax was architected for subjective purposes in the first place. So in this case, it's senseless to argue or to debate. I might have given this example in a certain context, maybe a long time ago, about the people in the car. Let's say that there are 4 people in a car. One is a master driver who has a driving license. The owner of the car, who doesn't have a driving license, doesn't know how to drive, but he owns the car. And in the car there's also a child that doesn't have a driving license, nor he knows how to drive, but he wants to drive because he thinks he knows how to drive. And the mother of that child, the child is crying because he wants to drive. The mother feels so bad for her sweet little child, and she asks the owner to allow him to drive. The owner says, hesitates. So the mother starts shaming the owner for not having enough grace and empathy to understand the pain of the child that he wants to drive and for not allowing him to drive in order to stop crying. The owner of the car gets intimidated and manipulated by the mother's tactics. He gets broken and he starts weighing who should drive, actually. Who should drive the car? Maybe the child should drive, actually. Why not, actually? Maybe the child it's fine. So he starts out of wishful thinking and hopeful thinking to find justifications why the child might be able also to drive. Maybe the owner of the car has also some agenda. Maybe he or she are feminists and they get intimidated by the masculinity of the master driver. So they want to break him because their ego is involved. So they blame him for being toxic masculinity, and he should not drive, and he should allow the little child to drive, and he should sit in the back seat. Or in the best case, he doesn't have an agenda. He just gets easily manipulated, and he's really in a dilemma between the child and the master driver, as if there's a dilemma. Anyway, eventually, the owner of the car asks the master driver to hand the keys to the child to step down and sit in the back seat and allow the child to drive. Now, for the master driver, it's not about ego or nationalism or gender equality or racial equality or generational equality. For them, it might be about that and about ego and guilt and pride. That's why they might project their issues and their characteristics upon him. But for him, it's not about ego. It's about survival. It's about life and death that no one in the car seems to care about at that moment. The owner is emotionally manipulated or has a political agenda. The mother doesn't care about anything but pleasing her beloved golden child. And the child is motivated out of his primal ego and desires and instant gratification. Only the master driver understands what that means. But unfortunately, he doesn't own the car, so he doesn't get to decide who's driving. But still, he or she have the free choice to step out of the car and walk their own path. Because any argument with the others here is senseless, because they all know what should be done. Yet, the narcissistic mother rejects considering or thinking in any direction that doesn't end allowing her golden child get what he wants, without any consideration how much damage that happiness can cost. 1 whole year thinking only in the directions of lockdowns and masks. They don't work. Yet, keep on. Nobody thinks that there's an agenda, that nobody's interested to research and to make real science, to know what's really happening and how to solve that. No, the agenda is lockdowns and masks. Nobody wants to consider or to think in any direction that ends otherwise. Despite all the damages, or at least the obvious dysfunctionality of this direction on a whole year. Now, when it comes to the owner, even when he or she have good intentions, still could not think straight. He or she were really weighing between the master driver and the child, and eventually made the decision in the favor of the child to drive. Now, in many governmental systems, golden children drive all the time, while no one dares to reject or challenge their narcissistic mothers and fathers. And everyone around must pay the price for the damages they cause. But if I were the owner of the car or the business, and if I'm the owner of my own life, and I'm the one who's paying the price of every damage that happens to my system, then I must have the courage to set boundaries, even when it creates conflicts that make me look bad in the eyes of the narcissistic mother and her golden child and the zombies and the enablers who support them. Because this is my business. And before someone says, yeah, but you're talking about business, how? If we talk about private lives, the same thing with private lives. Your body is your business. Your sovereignty is your business. Your emotional wealth is your business. Your physical health is your business. And any compromise would cost you the health or the wealth or both. So it's okay for me if the narcissist or the golden child or the corrupt enablers or the programmed zombies, it's okay if they think that I'm judgmental, too judgmental, or micromanaging, or hysteric, or paranoid, or strict. Anyway, they're going to put everything that I make in negative connotation because they want to drive my life. So if they don't like it, I'm driving my life, they can get out of my car. This is the case if I am the owner of the car. Sometimes those enablers are so brainwashed, or the zombies or the NPCs are so brainwashed that they would convert or they would put everything that I do or say in negative connotation. He gave the waitress too much money, too much tip, just to brag. He gave her a little tip, this frugal. He's bragging about his cell phone. Anything to portray you in a negative light. Some even try to top that using terminology of ideologies in order to intimidate. And those terminologies sound intellectually sophisticated, but they are actually very, very narrow-minded, like religious or racist or feminist or anti-Semitic, etc. And as someone who cares only about the functionality and the harmony of the system, because I'm the one who's going to pay the price, I don't care what religion or race or gender or political approach one has. All I care about is the competence and the values that are necessary to sustain and maintain the system, like commitment, loyalty, presence, etc. Systems that don't care about functionality and the harmony, they can afford talking about having 50% men and 50% women in the management. Functional systems and objective-oriented systems can't afford such decision-making patterns, because for us it's supposed to be about functionality and harmony that results of the functionality. Therefore, the decision-making process is inspired only by competence and the values. So for us it's irrelevant how much of a percentage there is. For us it can be 100% men, 100% women. I don't care. Our man's ego or woman's ego will not get hurt, because when competence leads, we all are happy to grow and thrive and benefit from it. When incompetent leads, everyone will be paying the price of the damages and the failures before even the golden children and the narcissists start to pay. So if we are going to argue about themes in objective-oriented environments, in objective-oriented systems, and the argument is functionality-driven, then first, it should not trigger conflicts, neither when it's just, nor when it's proven wrong, because everyone would be happy to find the solution, the real solution. Regardless of who finds it, everyone would be grateful to find the solution and to survive and to grow and to thrive. And two, the decision-making process has nothing to do with democracy or giving the space for everyone to express themselves, but rather to what leads to success and harmony. And in a functional and harmonic system, everyone will be grateful and thankful for the constructive results, including the opponents. The opponent will be grateful to be proven wrong and would be acknowledging the traits of the problem solvers. No ego involved. In dysfunctional systems, people care less about functionality and success and harmony, and care more about pleasing the golden children and the narcissists and making the environment more adaptive and flexible to match the expectations and to fulfill the wishes and the whims of the narcissists, regardless of functionality and harmony. Of course, the narcissists and their enablers would portray this toxic spirit or wrap it with a positive cover, like giving the space for everyone to express themselves, or gender equality, or racial equality. But such arguments are only indication to what they are trying to hide, which is allowing the incompetent golden children drive and do whatever they want and make as much damages as they want, while the whole group carries them on the shoulders, while the master drivers sit in the back seat, and everyone should pay the price of the damages they cause. In a harmonic and in a functional system, cohesiveness is already a state of being. Otherwise, it would not be harmonic and functional. The system is already cohesive, regardless of how much criticism there is and arguments or contradiction. On the contrary, contradiction and criticism and arguments are very welcome here, because they are necessary tools to expose the flaws of the system, so they can know what to work on and where to improve and how the system can heal. In dysfunctional systems, there is no cohesiveness anyway. There might be an illusion of cohesiveness, while in reality there's only the narcissist and the golden child on one side, and the rest on the other. Enablers, zombies, scapegoats, etc. That's why narcissistic-led groups always find scapegoats, because only a scapegoat or an outsider can shape their illusion of cohesiveness, because they can't unite around creativity and construction. So they need gossiping and bullying the scapegoat in order for them to unite around antagonism. So they need those scapegoats, and they need to keep creating crises in order to keep the group busy with that crisis and not see the source of corruption. This is what happened after the fall of the Soviet Union. 30 years of constant propaganda in Hollywood and in the media. Propaganda and false flags and war narratives against the Middle East just to access the supplies of oil and gas. And the enablers were so happy to hear about waterboarding Muslims in Guantanamo just because of that programmed hate. After the fall of the Soviet Union, 30 years of programming hate. And today, after scapegoat 1 is not relevant anymore, the narcissist is coming for the enablers who allowed him and allowed themselves to be vulnerable and allowed him to make them vulnerable, giving away their rights to the Patriot Act. The narcissist came for them to impoverish them financially and to force them into lockdowns and masking and drugs/vaccination. And the enablers are still not daring to resist because they don't want to be judged by the same scale and standard that they judged the previous scapegoat. So they keep standing in front of their abuser, begging for less restrictions, hoping that the abuser shows some mercy. It allows them a little bit to open their businesses, maybe less masks, hoping for the numbers to go down. But here, criticism is not welcome. Objective and factual arguments are not relevant. Complaining is not used as an indication to flaws, but rather to what is so-called negativity and childish behavior, or a covidiot, or any of those narcissistic judgments that are used in such contexts in order to create a narcissist-friendly belief systems and a narcissist-friendly environments. And unfortunately, most of humanity falls for it. So what can I do? If I'm the owner of the car, I must have the courage to set boundaries for the narcissistic mother and the golden child, to set my rules in my car. Either they comply, or they are free also to leave the car and look for another victim. If I were the master driver who is stuck with narcissists and their golden children and the zombies and the enablers that support them, and if I see the owner of the car too blind or too weak and easy to be manipulated, and he enables the arbitrariness of the narcissist, then first, this is an indication that he's not interested in any argument in the first place, so it's senseless for me even to try to convince. On the contrary, any attempt to present my case and to convince would make me look more hysteric and chaotic and would empower the narcissist and make him or her more stable and in control. So arguments in this context might be self-destructive for the master driver. 2. The master driver can't take over and force the group to do what should be done because this is not his car. And even if he tries to save them, he would not be considered as the savior, but rather as the terrorist or the criminal. And option 3, the master driver knows that staying in the car and conforming and allowing the little child to drive might cost him his life and the responsibility for allowing this to happen. So he can always leave the car and buy his own, or join people that he doesn't need to argue with about basic things and for granted issues. To connect with people where we don't need to argue whether 50% men or 50% women would get the job done, or whether we need to choose the most 100% competent regardless of their gender. Do we really need to argue and to discuss about this and that? To find an environment where we don't need to argue who should drive, the little child or the master driver, whether I should give the space to the narcissistic mother to present her ideas and to express herself and to present her case, because here there's no space for subjective and self-interest arguments wrapped with the sense and the illusion of objectivity. And when the master driver leaves the car and walks his own path or her own path with their skills and competence and creativity and vision, he would naturally reach his destination safely and peacefully. While the other car, despite the sense of cohesiveness the moment he left, they've already managed to make accidents on the way and fight with each other and get so many tickets, and the weak owner needs to pay so much money in order to fix the damages of the car, and his driving license was taken from him for being irresponsible, and the golden child got into a hospital after an accident, and the narcissistic mother is suing the owner for compensation while the insurance company rejects to pay. I use this as an allegory, but I have so many examples from real life, but I can't share them here in order not to embarrass the characters involved. Anyway, arguments might be vital in certain environments and in certain contexts and might be irrelevant in others. So we just need to observe the dynamics and choose what is relevant. Thank you, Regiv, for the comment. I hope I could shed some light on it. Thank you everyone for staying with me. I'm Shredy Jabarin. Ciao.